There's actually a more recent interview than this one, but I remember watching this yesterday and thinking, he looks so confident. Look at Brad Garlinghouse, man. He seems very confident and very bright in the way he's speaking. Everybody else is having panic attacks about tariffs, and everybody else is, kind of wondering where crypto market is going with the crash. Are we going into a recession, etc.? But not Ripple. Ripple has acquired one of the largest brokers in the field, Hidden Road, which is a business to business, so financial clients, financial broker, which makes Ripple the only crypto company to have exposure into such a business, which kind of highlights where they're going. But then I saw this interview, and man, if you're not bullish and if you're not confident in where XRP is going, then I don't know what else to say. So I'll play a little bit of this just to give you a little bit of a reaction. I'm sure you've already seen this video anyway.
Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse. Ripple's XRP is the native token of the decentralized blockchain XRP ledger. Litigious. As recently as our conversation with Hester Peirce of the SEC, one of the commissioners, she said that the lawsuit against Ripple was still hovering. Where is it now? Because last night we started to hear that it may be disappearing.
So we have reached agreement with staff, and usually what happens is you reach agreement with staff makes recommendation to the commission, and then the commission votes. So anytime we make announcements about that, we are clear that we've reached agreement with staff. The commission hasn't yet voted, but what we've agreed is to dismiss and move on. We're actually getting, the SEC we had put in escrow a potential fine of $125 million. We're actually taking most of
that's
that
interesting.
back,
Okay.
including the interest that had been earned along the way.
Okay, so this is kind of funny. So the money that they put away to pay whatever fine might have been levied, right? So they were prepared to pay, the fine that they thought they were going to have to pay. They put that in escrow. That money is generated profit. So they've made money by putting some of it away. Obviously, the price of XRP has gone up massively. It's gone up massively. If they let's say they put it from cash or from a stable coin into XRP and into escrow, say this time last year, that money is done a 5x. That's actually quite interesting. I never even thought of it that way. That might not be what he's talking about, but that's what I'm assuming he is talking about. That is a massive profit. And a lot of people probably heard that and thought, oh, it's made 10, 20%. No, that's a 600% that we're talking about here. 580%, roughly, actually, to be more precise.
And I think it's just evidence that the Gensler SEC was on the wrong side of the law. And
that's for sure.
Thanks to the new leadership at the SEC and in the White House, I think we're seeing a much more constructive, much more pro-innovation. We want these industries to grow at home.
When you say most of the $125 million you had parked in that little fund in case of the worst case scenario, what's left? Can you give us some?
The SEC is going to end up with a $50 million. The U.S. government's going to get $50 million.
Oh, so by the way, I saw in another post that the SEC is not going to get any of the money, that the government is going to get the money. But in this video, he is saying that the SEC will get some of the money. Okay.
We've even talked about making that available in XRP. But look, at the end of the day, this is...
Yeah, that would be interesting if they just gave XRP. This could be a way that the government starts to accumulate XRP. If they just gave that money to the government in XRP and it forms some kind of part of the strategic hoard, that would give, clout to XRP.
This is a major step forward. I think if you kind of zoom out and look at this, the Trump administration is absolutely living up to their promises. Guy David Sachs leading the effort at the White House, Scott Bessent, and certainly now Paul Atkins getting confirmed, I think, yesterday.
Yes.
These are people who are focused on how do we make sure this is an industry that can thrive at home with sensible regulation.
By the way, I know that Trump is sort of a bad sounding thing to people now, especially because of the tariffs, right? People are more focused on what's happening with China and with the EU and the back and forth. I know there's been a pause for everybody else. I think China has been exempt from the pause. But in terms of what he said he was going to do with crypto, that he is getting done, right? We've had the SEC effectively disbanded. We've had a lot of pullbacks from the IRS and other government bodies concerning the litigation that they were chasing. They've scaled down dramatically the litigation of crypto-based companies and individuals. Some have received pardons. They've announced Bitcoin as being part of a strategic hoard. A lot has happened. They're doing this US first or America first crypto business deals. They're revitalizing all otherwise dead tokens that are US based. You have Ripple, who's collaborating with different organizations and now hiring more in the United States, or providing employment in the United States, whereas before they couldn't do any such thing because they were, weighed down by all the litigation. So a lot is going on in the background, right? There's also that, a lot of SEC is dropping a lot of lawsuits. The Helium one, there's a broker that can now function because the SEC has gone away. The IRS has, got off their necks. A lot is happening in the background in the crypto industry that's positive because of the new administration. And it's being overshadowed right now because of the bigger effect of the macro environment when it comes to the tariff wars. But I do believe that the tariff wars will eventually cool off. And when that happens, we're going to see the big effect of the more crypto-friendly environment that he's creating in the United States.
Common sense. And that's not what we had for the last 4 years.
What would you hope to see as common sense regulation? Have you talked to David Sachs, and what have you said? Hey, David, this at least needs to be front and center.
The two things that have the most momentum in Capitol Hill are around a stablecoin legislation and then something we generally call a market structure bill. Stablecoin legislation, because we haven't yet had clarity about at what point are banks involved, not involved, what kind of licensing is appropriate. Ripple recently launched our stablecoin under a New York trust license through the New York Department of Financial Services, which we think is kind of the gold standard for how to be regulated in this market. But having federal legislation that is providing clarity for the big players like USDC, Circle, as well as Tether is super important. I think we're going to see that sooner rather than later.
I'm glad that he mentioned Tether there, because I am actually a big fan of Tether. I'm a bigger fan of Tether than I am of even RLUSD or most definitely USDC, right? Because Tether is not an American company. I think they've faced a little bit of persecution, and they've been sort of pushed back a little bit to reduce their stranglehold on the sort of dry powder economy, to give the likes of USDC some breathing space to be able to, march on and get some market share. But I think that Tether is very, very important. They are the cornerstone at the moment of DeFi. I know that RLUSD is making waves in that aspect as well. But I believe when it comes to stable coins, the more the merrier, and having more of them that are solid stable coins gives us more opportunities and more choice. And it prevents the inevitable, which is turning things like USDC and RLUSD into sort of CBDC-esque tokens, right? Placeholders for CBDCs without calling them CBDCs. And the only way that they can achieve that is if the market share of RLUSD or USDC becomes absolutely huge, such that they become a kind of monopoly. And if that happens, then we have one centralized body that's controlling all of that, and that becomes effectively a CBDC.
President Trump has made big strides that are very pro-crypto. It's got to be great for somebody like you. However, the price of, let's just say, Bitcoin, which reached a high after the election of something like $107,000, is nowhere near that now. I think we're around 86,000 and change, but it's been a market drop. When do you foresee this?
Actually, let's have a look at what the price is now.
Because
Bitcoin.
we've seen all kinds of wild projections of something like $250,000.
Yep, so that's pretty much what she's saying.
By the end of this
85
year,
and some change.
People who say this thing's going down.
Yeah. When I think about that, your last guest, Larry Fink, talked about just taking the long-term view.
Right.
And I almost don't think about it in that kind of short-term time frame. I think about what are the macro trends playing out for the crypto industry,
XRP is
for the
pumping.
XRP ecosystem. XRP has been the best performing major crypto in the last 90 days.
That's a fact.
We think about it as what does that look like over the next 3 years? I'm very optimistic. I mean, Ripple
As
just
I am.
announced our largest acquisition, actually one of the largest acquisitions in the entire crypto industry to date. We announced it earlier this week on Tuesday, in the middle of tariff palooza. I don't know exactly what's going to happen with the tariffs, but
This is exactly what I said in the beginning. While everybody else was panicking, struggling with the macro events, uncertainty, fear, the market was in extreme fear on Tuesday when Ripple acquired that company, Hidden Road, I believe that's what he's talking about. Massive acquisition. The whole world is in turmoil. Financial market crashing, Nasdaq crashing, FTSE crashing, everybody crashing. Yet somehow Ripple is making moves, buying all these industries and making all these connections. There was an ETF that was launched. Mind you, it was a futures ETF. It was a 2x leverage long ETF. Not a big fan of that, but at least it signifies that, moves are being made. So yeah, Ripple is on a different playing field. As I mentioned in one of my walking videos in the bright sunshine, that Ripple effectively now is in league with those giant organizations that we love to hate. Let's just see how long they last before people start calling them the establishment.
we're betting on where the world's going to be in 3 years, not what's going to happen in the next 6 months.
Would you have made that acquisition a year ago?
No, hard no. Look,
Interesting.
the SEC in the United States and even other parts of the Biden administration, it was a coordinated attack across many different agencies.
I agree.
We're finding that more and more out now. Banks weren't even allowed to reasonably custody crypto without having an equal offset to their balance sheet.
Can I just say that is absolutely true? And there's going to be an investigation at some point that is going to find that not only was it a coordinated attack across different agencies, that they also had some unscrupulous, hidden sort of incognito people who are contacting banks, contacting businesses to make sure that crypto things didn't succeed, to debank people, to not accept crypto. Here in the UK, for instance, Royal Mail does not accept Crypto.com Visa cards, even though it's just a Visa card like any other card. And there's all these little things, little hurdles, little roadblocks that have been put in front of crypto projects and crypto companies to make them seem a little bit janky, to make things a little bit more difficult, to disadvantage them in what is supposed to be a free and open market. And when these investigations happen, there's going to be massive scandals. And I myself, I'm looking forward to it, to be honest with you.
Which really makes no sense for a bank then to even partake in this industry. It's a real industry. That administration wasn't listening to consumers. They weren't listening to the voter and what the voter wanted. We're now seeing a significant change across the board. And an acquisition like that would have made no sense a year ago, and it makes a lot of sense now.
It is truly amazing. I am looking at you and I am remembering, was it 2 or 3 years ago? How long has this lawsuit been slapped on you guys?
December 22nd, 2020.
Okay.
So 4.5
Four and a half years.
That's a
We've
long
been
time.
talking,
Just in
and
time to miss the
I
previous
thought to
all-time
myself,
high bull
what's gonna
market.
happen here? And you are on sort of the edge, the cusp of this just finally disappearing.
For sure. And it's good for Ripple, it's good for XRP, but it's also good for the whole industry. We want these industries not to be pushed offshore. And what was happening in the last...
Sorry, let's play that bit again for the haters.
Finally disappearing.
For sure. And it's good for Ripple, it's good for XRP.
Sorry, what was that? Say that again.
Disappearing.
For sure. And it's good for Ripple,
It's good for XRP. So people who think that Brad Garlinghouse and Ripple have abandoned XRP and they're only working for their IPO, for RLUSD or what have you, know that, they still talk about XRP every day and you hear it from the horse's mouth. It's good for XRP.
But it's also good for the whole industry. We want these industries not to be pushed offshore. And what was happening in the last 4 years is almost the opposite. We think it's safer to push them to offshore entities.
How many employees do you have? Let's let people understand how many people you employ.
With our acquisition, we employ about 1,100 people now.
That's incredible.
And these are high-paying jobs. And for a period of time, as
Yeah,
you and I
exactly.
talked about before, for really the 4 years of the Biden administration, we did more hiring outside the United States than here at home.
Can I just point out that, again, Ripple is a US based company, right? It's a big US based company. And the prior administration was doing their best to ensure that this company failed, right? Now, can you imagine an administration who is working against a company from their own country who employs people, provides employment, who are giving their country a fighting chance in, what is a new, a paradigm shift, right? One of the companies that is putting the United States forward as the foremost country in, basically this genre, this new industry, and making it impossible for them to hire people who are American in America and pushing investment and innovation offshore because they have to, because the climate at home is inhospitable to the industry. That's just weird to me. That's just mind-boggling. And the new administration, whether or not you like him, has created an environment where such a company can do for the country and hire within the country, bring some of that talent back, bring some of that production back, and effectively bring some of that money back to the country.
As a U.S. citizen, I grew up in Kansas. I'd like to hire people here. We have some of the best talent in the world here. But it made no sense to invest in a market where we couldn't sign customers. We couldn't actually see banks benefit from a better, simpler cross-border settlement for payments.
By the way, obviously, I'm not an American, so, this doesn't actually concern me as much in terms of from the political sense. It's just, from an outsider's point of view, I find it really, really strange that, some of the policies in America are disadvantaging or were disadvantaging American companies and giving other countries a leg up over the United States. Here in the UK, we have a lot of similar policies that push investment and talent. A lot of the billionaires definitely have left the UK for greener pastures in terms of tax or whatever, or if just even a better life, to places like Portugal. Some people have gone to Dubai, etc., South Africa. A lot of it is based on just how bad the tax laws are here, and some of the legislation, regulations are just not very friendly.
These are technologies that really can help and revolutionize businesses, consumer experiences, but we have to be able to deliver them to these audiences.
Yeah, I mean, it was more than 10 years ago, I think, we had the Winklevoss brothers getting rejected for their push to have an ETF.
Imagine that. That's weird.
Allowed people to invest in Bitcoin, and it was a flat-out mic drop no.
No way, how dare you.
Of those. And this week, an XRP ETF launched, correct?
Yep.
It hasn't yet traded live in the United States, but it's been, we've had, I think, 11 different applications to go live with an ETF trading here in the United States. We do have it trading outside the United States. This is long overdue. And it's a step towards a more institutionalized, safer way for people to participate in these markets. Our acquisition this week, Hidden Road, we paid a $1.25 billion for what's called a prime broker.
Whoa.
This allows even larger institutions like BlackRock, like the biggest Wall Street financial institutions, to come.
So I mentioned BlackRock in a video that I made concerning this. I wasn't sure if BlackRock would do business with Hidden Road, but effectively Brad has verified that yes, indeed, BlackRock does do business. So again, that puts Ripple in effectively the same room with the likes of BlackRock. That's absolutely huge.
Come into this market in a way they understand, with a safer prime broker to help clear transactions and a bigger balance sheet to do that. It's good for the whole industry.
God, there's so much money coming into the system.
Thought when it comes to the trade war, because people had been saying for a while that Bitcoin and crypto were a hedge against all kinds of concern about a falling dollar. I mean, even Larry Fink said on this network, on this show about a year ago, that it was a hedge against cratering currencies of whoever's country. That hasn't quite come into play. The dollar has been falling really precipitously over the past 5-6 days. In fact, it was continuing, at least as of this morning. It hit a 3-year low against the euro and a 10-year low against the Swiss franc. And crypto, at least today, is moving higher, but it moves all over the place. What drives the the price of crypto?
Printing money, money printing. Anyway, I'll let him talk.
I wish I had a clean answer to that question. Like any market, a lot of factors drive that. I mean, there was a period of time as some of the tariff dynamics were playing out where crypto was clearly outperforming the equity markets. But you know, some people expected it to perform more like gold, where you're seeing all-time highs. I think people are still figuring out how that'll play out. I think the long-term value here is going to be very clear. It is a hedge against inflation. It is a dynamic where the more utility we drive in the crypto markets, the more we're going to see value accrete to that market.
Exactly.
I don't know if you do this, but I'm going to ask you anyway and push you. What is your price target for Bitcoin?
Let's hear it. This is a good one.
Predicted, as
I think I know what he's going to say.
250,000 by year end.
You know, I will predict Bitcoin. I wouldn't predict
200,000.
too close to home, but I think 200,000
there
is
you
not
go.
unreasonable. I think before I kind of said it, you know,
so another
1.5
2x and a bit
I think people
for Bitcoin.
underestimate how the largest economy.
All right, I think that's the end of the interview anyway. So 200,000 Bitcoin, which would represent slightly over 2x and some change. If that were to happen, we're going to see an insane response from the other coins, especially XRP. And going down the market cap list, man, some of these coins are already sort of, you know, 99% down, 98% down, which is quite surprising for this time of the year and this far into the bull run. I would have expected all of them to be back at least a minimum of 50%. One or two of them have actually made new all-time highs. Shout out to Solana. Shout out to Sui. Shout out to which other one was it that made it? I think it was Matic. Was it Matic? Polygon last year. But the rest, they're like 85%, 95% down. And if the whales do what they normally do, we're going to see the money cycle down, I think. Maybe not as aggressively as it used to be in the past, but these guys are 90% down. So there's a lot of juice in the market at the moment. I'm super optimistic. And in a way, I'm sort of happy about this tariff wars. It's allowed me to accumulate a little bit more than I already would have. I don't think that I had enough accumulation by the end of last year. But I'm getting there. So not financial advice, your own research. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.